cooperation with the Embassy of New Zealand, I've organised the workshop at the cooperation workshop in regards to agriculture Peru, New Zealand. Before starting this workshop, I would kindly request you to turn off your mobiles. Before starting, I'd like to introduce you to our table of honor. First, the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Mariasa, also the Ambassador of New Zealand, Dr. Jackie Kane, Vice Minister of Agriculture, Juan Risi, and also the Advisor of Agriculture, Dr. Benjamin Candria. We will start with the workshop with the welcoming words that will be given by our Vice Chancellor, Enrique Mariasa. Different representatives from the agriculture sector, ladies and gentlemen. It is for me an honor as Vice Chancellor to, in representation of the university, to welcome you and express you our sincere acknowledgement to New Zealand and to their institutions that contribute as an example of democracy and development. And I would like to also express my gratitude to the development of the agriculture, development of the country. The associated pasture technology has changed the life of different families, farmer families, who are dedicated to the dairy production and has reduced poverty. This university has more than 100 years. It was founded in 1902 in cooperation with the Belgian Corporation, and it was first established in Santa Beatriz and later was established here in La Molina. And a second stage of its development started, and that is why right now we are in an international ranking of international agricultural universities, and in the country as a leader university in environment and natural resources. New Zealand and Peru have joined in different activities since the 70s. There was a very important livestock development program was started in the south, but we stopped it due to terrorism. But we couldn't stop using the different New Zealand products due to its quality and its great adaptation to the existing conditions in the different areas of natural pastures. And the legacy stands until now in some of the memories of the farmers in the south and in general in all Peruvians. Also in 2016, we are again witness of an important agreement between New Zealand and the Ministry of Agriculture for $4.8 million in order to improve the dairy production in 3 regions, Puno, Cusco, and Cajamarca, that will benefit 200,000 farmers that have approximately 300,000 cows and then produce tons of milk in conditions of pastures. We need to acknowledge the important support from New Zealand. They've incorporated milk genetics. Perennial.
proyectos de desarrollo.
Development. In the future, so we can work together, so we can provide our experience in ecology and pasture management in we have many things to thank you as a representative of the government of New Zealand because of the important and significant contribution to our livestock development in Peru. Thank you very much and welcome all of you to our university. Mr. Vice Chancellor, and now we invite the advisor of my advisor, Madam Nikin, who also inaugurate this workshop. Sí. Okay. Ya, espérame. Pero ¿me puedes cerrar igualito? Ya.
Esto va a tener un impacto inmediato en la productividad lechera, ya que durante este año los mismos animales, las mismas vacas, las mismas ovejas llaman. Es en ese sentido que nosotros esperamos, y quiero repetir las palabras del señor rector, seguir trabajando porque tenemos un modelo particularmente interesante, sobre todo ahora en la cual se habla de la sostenibilidad y el manejo inteligente del medio ambiente del modelo neozelandés. Es un modelo distinto, es un modelo diferente, no es la ganadería americana, no es la ganadería típica que se da, y yo creo que esto es lo que hace particularmente importante a Nueva Zelanda como productor mundial de leche, porque su base productiva es absolutamente forrajera, es hecho de una manera muy especial y diferente a lo que se hace en otros países. Estas experiencias hacen de que nosotros podamos seguir con particular atención lo que viene ocurriendo en este momento con el programa cooperativo que tiene el Ministerio de Agricultura con el gobierno de Nueva Zelanda en el desarrollo lechero, que va a ser expuesto en pocos minutos acá. Y esto nos permite nuevamente saber que contamos con un país amigo, que contamos con la capacidad de poder trabajar juntos, que muchos colegas, algunos tal vez presentes, han podido ir y conocer la realidad productiva de Nueva Zelanda y que eso nos permita a nosotros poder superar esas tremendas brechas de productividad que todavía tenemos en este país. Con esto quisiera dejar abierto el foro para las discusiones que vamos a tener en el transcurso del día y que espero que contribuyan a fortalecer aún más esta relación que se mantiene con el gobierno amigo de Nueva Zelanda. Muchísimas gracias.
Agradecemos al doctor Quijandría por sus palabras. Acto seguido, la embajadora, doctora Jackie Kane, nos hablará de las relaciones bilaterales entre Perú y Nueva Zelanda. Quiero señalar que ella estudió Derecho y Economía en la Universidad de Otago, en Nueva Zelanda. Es una diplomática de carrera y se ha desempeñado en múltiples roles dentro del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores de Nueva Zelanda, incluyendo en la División de Negociaciones Comerciales, División Legal y División de las Américas. Doctora.
E ngā mana, e ngā reo, he mihi mahara ki a koutou kua hui hui mai nei I rote te kaupapa o tēnei rā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Buenos días a todos los presentes. Primero que nada, quisiera saludar y agradecer al rector de La Molina, doctor Enrique Flores, el viceministro de Políticas Agrarias, doctor Juan Risi, y también el asesor de la alta dirección del Ministerio de Agricultura, doctor Benjamín Quijandría. Es un honor poder estar aquí para conversar acerca de la cálida relación bilateral entre Perú y Nueva Zelanda frente a ustedes. Como bien dije, la relación entre Nueva Zelanda y Perú es amistosa y compartimos muchas visiones en común. Sí, somos países amigos. Nuestra relación se sustenta en la participación conjunta en múltiples foros y acuerdos internacionales. Por ejemplo, en APEC, el Grupo Cairns de la OMC, el Tratado Integral y Progresista de Asociación Transpacífico o el CPTPP, y a través de la negociación de Nueva Zelanda de un acuerdo de comercio con la Alianza del Pacífico. Nueva Zelanda y Perú comparten similares visiones en muchos temas globales de profunda importancia, tales como pesquerías, el desarme, el cambio climático, los derechos indígenas y el acuerdo de comercio de armas. En un gesto de crecimiento de importancia en la relación entre nuestros países y como forma de acercarnos aún más, el Congreso peruano recién estableció una liga parlamentaria de amistad Perú-Nueva Zelanda, la cual incluye varios congresistas para fortalecer conexiones y relaciones entre nuestros dos países. Por otra parte, la iniciativa de Perú de reabrir una embajada en mi país nos tiene muy satisfechos. A nivel político, en los últimos años hemos sido testigos de una constante huelga de visitas de alto nivel. Un hito en nuestra relación fue cuando Perú fue país anfitrión de APEC en 2016. El primer ministro de Nueva Zelanda y varios otros ministros visitaron el Perú para promover la cooperación bilateral y regional. Otro hito el año pasado fue la visita de la presidenta de la Federación de Autoridades Maoríes, Tracy Haupapa, al Perú, con motivo de abordar temas indígenas, un área en que Nueva Zelanda es vista como un modelo de mejores prácticas para Latinoamérica. Y la semana pasada tuvimos la visita de nuestro subsecretario parlamentario de Relaciones Exteriores, Fletcher Tabito, a Lima para conversar y conocer a importantes autoridades de gobierno y ofrecer una presentación en la Universidad del Pacífico. En el área comercial también están sucediendo cosas muy interesantes y que es de esperar ayuden a estrechar aún más nuestros lazos. Por ejemplo, el CPTPP fue firmado el 8 de marzo en Santiago. Este hecho marca la primera vez en que Nueva Zelanda y Perú serán parte de un acuerdo de libre comercio que incluya a nuestros dos países y beneficiar tanto a los negocios neozelandeses como los peruanos. Además, Nueva Zelanda es candidato a Estado asociado de la Alianza del Pacífico y actualmente está negociando un acuerdo comercial con los 4 miembros del grupo. Ayer nos reunimos con el Grupo de Relaciones Exteriores de la Alianza aquí en Lima para explicar toda la colaboración que hemos llevado a cabo con la Alianza a través de nuestra iniciativa de cooperación agrícola Alianza del Pacífico Nueva Zelanda. Nuestros países también están a puertas de finalizar un acuerdo bilateral de servicios aéreos para permitir códigos compartidos con el objetivo de mejorar la conectividad.
A ver, ¿dónde? Pero...
Así tanto el
from people to people. Thinking about these things, New Zealand and Peru, they have also an agreement of working hard. So the Peruvians will be able to travel to New Zealand, and we had many students going there. At educational levels, New Zealand educations were also, we had an agreement with Pronavec Peru, the national program of scholarships, and in 2015, so Peruvians can go and have study their masters and also doctorates there. Also, this is the first time that we have this scholarship program, and that's going to help us to strengthen the relationship between Peru and New Zealand. The program allows to these scholarship awardees to have their do their practices in other countries, like in Latin America, like Peru. Also, Peru's they will be able to apply to the different scholarships in New Zealand, and the process is already open. This scholarship allows the opportunity to continue postgraduate studies in development areas like agriculture, renewable energies, and also risk management. And obviously, in the agricultural area, there's a lot of collaboration. The economic relation with Peru is modest, but it is growing. New Zealand exports a total of 102 million products a year. 102 million New Zealand dollars in products a year. And out of it, 76 come from dairy products. And also New Zealand and Peru have been working together for more than 40 years in order to develop the dairy products. As the Vice Chancellor has mentioned, Peru and New Zealand has launched a program of the dairy sector in 4 years using New Zealand knowledge in pasture in order to improve the profitability of different farmers in the areas of Cusco, Puno, and Cajamarca. You will have the opportunity to listen more about these projects and the different objectives. Through this initiative of the Pacific Alliance, my country has started different projects in order to create more agricultural cooperation between our countries. For example, the exchange of experts. And recently, they also financed the initiative of the Manuka Funds, where 2 workers of each country of the Pacific Alliance, they were able to study the theory and also in practice in the south of Chile in order to learn about the adaptability of the pastures according to New Zealand models. Today, for example, Juan David, one of the persons from Peru, he will share his experience in Manuka. As you can see, our relation is every day more active and more interesting, and there's still more things to collaborate together, to collaborate in the future. I hope that this activity will contribute to strengthen even more our collaboration relation between our two countries. Thank you very much. We thank the ambassador for her words. Right now, I would like to invite our guests to sit on the first row so we can start the presentations.
Seguidamente,
then we have the exposition about the project of the dairy support project to Peru. It will be done by César Pinares and Miranda Hunter and from the engineer Jorge Bernard. I also would like to invite Dr. César Pinares, who will start this exposition. He is the international coordinator of the support program to the dairy area in Peru. He's a master's and PhD in animal science. He was a professor here in this university. And he has worked also as a scientific in Australia. So here it is, Dr. Pinares. Good morning, everyone. I don't know if you can see me because I'm quite small. First, I want to thank the presence of you, especially the Vice Chancellor of our university, Dr. Juan Risi, Dr. Becandria, and also the Ambassador of New Zealand. We have prepared a presentation for this project, which is called Project of New Zealand Support to the Peruvian Dairy Sector. So we have divided this presentation in three. So we don't want to bore you. The first part will be done by Jorge Bernal, who is the national coordinator of this project. Then, because of the project wants to bring the main technological properties from New Zealand to Peru, we will have also the presentation from our colleague Miranda Hunter. And finally, I will do a presentation about how these principles they need to consider the Andean characteristics. So what are the limitations that we need to take into account? As I explained, first we're going to start describing the project. Jorge Bernal will do it. Then Miranda will explain about New Zealand, the characteristics of the dairy production, and also later, if we have time, I'll explain what are the area where we are working. So right now, Jorge Bernal, he will do the presentation of the first part. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I think that we have the history of the New Zealand cooperation in livestock matters. However, I will have to also add that also in agricultural matters, we also had some projects, some cooperation projects that were quite interesting, that were also linked with the Ministry of Agriculture. This project had a long period of forming, and so end of 2013 we started the conversation, and from then we started to exchange information. There was a technical mission from New Zealand that came here to explore the opportunity, the intervention opportunities here in Peru, and they managed the value chain of, and also the value chain of dairy. And finally, they decided to work on dairy because it's one of the New Zealand strengths in the agricultural sector. And so that's how in 2015 we prepared a document of activities design, and it was signed, this agreement, in August 2016. The project, it was launched officially in October 2016, and since then we've been working continuously. I want to present you the framework of the results framework. As we can see here, that the results, thank you, are short, medium, and long term. So the project is funded basically on the installation of pilots for, let's say, for the first components. And the pilots, what we look for is to develop practices of milk production and also the processing of cheese. Excuse me. Somebody will help me because I cannot use the control. Okay, so we see this is the results framework of the project. We said that we had short, medium, and long-term results, and this project is funded on the implementation of pilots to transform not only milk but also cheeses. And from these pilots, we will show and demonstrate optimized practices both in the production of cheeses and also production of milk, raw milk. But this wouldn't be possible if we don't have a component that articulates the change in these units or pilots. So this is the third component of the project, that it's referred to the optimization of research and extension centered in the user. But who are the users? The users are the farmers, or the farmers of milk and cheese. So in this third component has, this third component has a great interaction, and this interaction is centered in the user, is that we can achieve that the farmers who are related to the modules, like let's say like the members of the organizations where the pilots are, they can start showing improved practices, because only with just showing the different practices that we can develop livestock. But where or how we can sustain this development of practices is just for strengthening the capabilities of these providers of extension. If we cannot develop these strengths, then it would maybe we won't get good results. But this is the purpose of this project. So we want to achieve that by 2020. From then, it is responsibility from our country to continue with the development of the livestock, the dairy livestock, and looking for profitability and sustainability. So we hope as a project that all this way of working that we are developing will help to establish and promote the proposals of public policies that will be centered or focused on regional and national areas. Who do we work with? In order to fulfill the objectives from the project, we work with a group from New Zealand. The one who leads is the company Agribusiness. Agribusiness is a company that has great expertise with developing extension projects. They've done it in South America, in Uruguay with meat, with beef. In Colombia also they have a parallel project that it's a little bit older than ours, also with dairy. Also they have done it, they are doing it in our country. Also they have work in the Philippines, in some islands from the Pacific. And we also know that they have also some projects in Africa. So what is the function of Agribusiness Group? Well, the Agribusiness Group has the function to organize an entrepreneur group from New Zealand to support this. And this is the relation that we see. The Agribusiness Group is kind of like the pivot of all these different companies. For example, we have Roslin Consulting, which is a very important company that presents extension services to dairy farmers. Also, we have the Cheese School for New Zealand. So we have also the QCons. It's a good company. It's a company that is very linked to milk quality and provides services to Fonterra and also to some cooperatives in Brazil. And currently is developing works in the different dairy companies in China. Also, it's also part of this group, PGG Rice and Seeds, which is a company that produces seeds, specializes in seeds genetics. It's the most important company in this sector in New Zealand. And also, there's also the company of Livestock Improvement Corporation, the LIC. And the last one, and I put in the last part because it's not the less important, because I just want to highlight that this is part of it's AgriSearch. That's the entity in New Zealand that develops research in pastures, in beef, in ovins, in goats, and also in deer. So it's an entity to develop research in pasture systems. Who is the participants from Peru? What is the Peruvian group? Well, the Livestock General Directorate. Also, through, for example, I'm the national coordinator. Also, we have Agro Rural, which is a co-funding entity, and also works with us in the 3 areas where we are working. And then also we have the National Institute of Agrarian Innovation, INIA. So we have the different, the National Program of Technology Transfer, and we've been working with them since December last year. And then we have the PNIA, which was also considered within the project, the design of the project, as a co-funding. So we had to also, because also we have to contest to get this participation. We also have collaborators, Sierra y Selva Exportadora. Well, we have also the regional government, or maybe a group of specialists that are linked to these the areas. We also have universities and technical institutions, and also providers of equipment and products. So we already mentioned that we are in these areas. that are very different. We also have a focus that the main objective is to develop capabilities of farmers, extensionists, and researchers. The project doesn't want to bring to transplant systems from New Zealand. What we want to do is adapt that system to our conditions and also to validate the proposed technologies. So we are talking about systems. So we see livestock as a system. And here we have a scheme of a very simple of what a livestock system is. Here there are three variables of the system that the farmer can control, and that's the soil, the livestock, and the pastures. And the farmer can control the interrelations between these three variables. But also there are variables that the farmer cannot control. For example, the farmer cannot control the market, cannot control the weather. So the farmer needs to know that they need to focus in the interrelation of these variables that he or she can control. Definitely, if the farmer does an effective control of this variable, will have a good production of milk and also good income. But the income or the productivity, is that important? No, what we need to focus on is on production costs. If we don't measure the impact of our interventions in the variable of the system with a cost focus, we won't have profits. In order to see this, we need to register everything. So when we have like registration of all of this, so we can see all the different interventions, and all the interventions will generate profitability, because that's what we want, that the business is profitable. As you can see, there are many variables that are managed within this focus. This is a systemic focus. So we need to know what is the extension focus that we should use. The project is proposing to use an adapting focus, where we can find the demand of the farmers to participate in the extension, because it is a complex system. But for example, here, if we see the simple problems, we can manage using a technology transfer focus. For example, the cleaning. A cleaning part is quite simple, but it doesn't require big effort. So we, as a project, we're focusing on adapting, and probably later we will focus on co-innovation, and maybe the industry can participate, maybe providers of seeds or fertilizers. Talking about that now, I want to explain a little bit more what are the contents of the projects. Mainly on the first component, we're focusing a lot on pastures. We want to focus on what is the perfect moment for pastures and also the forage. We think that's the most important part for the milk production. In regards to the second component, we are focusing on the practices of milking practices, and the third component in associating the researchers to the stakeholders of the chain, because the farmer is a very important actor here. Here, these are the organizations where we are. We have 3 organizations by area. In each organization, we have 3 pilots. In total, we have 27 pilot modules in these 3 areas or regions. And this is the registry of the different plants. So we only have 3 pilot plants in each department. The next one. This scheme shows the intervention strategy in regards to the farm. How we're going to intervene. First, we're going to check the baseline, and based on that, we will define the key indicators of performance and the registration of data. And then together with the farmer and the extensionist, we design a development plan for the farm. This farm development plan has different action plans that later will be implemented, and then they will reach a moment that will have to be revised through the monitoring area of the project, and then we will continue with the action plan. And during the process, we will start developing tools that will be supported by an extension program. Then later, all the reports will done through the project. Everything will have reports. What have we been doing right now? What activities are we doing at the moment? For example, the baselines, they are already developed, but both for cheese and milk. In the case of the farms, also we have the different developments for the farms. Also, we have established standard operating procedures in order to obtain good quality of raw milk and cheese after the transformation process. But something important that I want to also express, it's in regards to the PINIA projects. One of the components is in regards to research projects that can be adapted. So we have right now 3 extension adapted projects in cultivated pastures in the areas of the projects, and probably there we will be able to see which adapt better to the different environmental conditions. But also we are also working with other projects from PINIA, like extension services, basically to train the extensionists and also the farmers about forage budget, so we can that can allow us to identify excess. Also, we have developed 3 trips to New Zealand where specialists from our universities or from agro-rural and from the livestock directorate and also farmers. And this is for the 3 components of the project. And also there's a continuing training of extensionists and farmers and researchers with the participation of the technical missions that I mentioned before. What we're trying to focus on is on the development of activities of low-cost activity and great impact on the farm. We develop research needs because nobody else knows what they need to change the situation of the farm, only the farmer. So we want to link the farmer through the extensionists with the research, so we can do the field research. And here we can see how it's a day of work, how the producers relate with each other. There's one farmer who is the owner of the pilot, who has established his development plan, who is explaining to the members of her organization what are the commitments of change that he or she is assuming with the project. And that, with time, we will organize more days, and they will show, for example, the success or the failures of the different decisions that they've taken for the production. So that's what we want to do, to show like the good and bad things, so we can see what the good path is. Here, these are some interesting evaluations from milk. At the moment when the milk enters the transformation plant, as we can see here, we can tell that the milk that arrives to the plant is a good milk. If we can say it in a simple way, it's really good milk. However, when we see that, for example, we can see here the quantity of coliforms and E. coli. They are not very significant, but on the contrary, when we take samples and we see how is we want to see the contamination level in different parts of the plant, we see that we found a big surprise. That's where the contamination is, and for us it's a surprise, because normally we hear that the farmer is the one that is responsible to deliver that is responsible to deliver contaminated milk. But with this preliminary study in the different pilots shows us that the contamination happens in the plants. And here is where we can see why this contamination happens. Because we see that in the cheese plants, they have not been implemented with adequate equipment. We can see in these, for example, in these parts that they are impossible to be clean in some parts. For example, it's full of coliforms. For example, that tube there, it's impossible to be clean. This part here that it's used after you pasteurize the milk, you put here is the thermometer, and so you can find the perfect temperature for the culture. But here, see, if you can see, it's full of residues. So all the work that we did about the pasteurization is ruined. Same here. We pasteurize the milk and we use these molds that are impossible to disinfect. They cannot be disinfected. Look at that, recipient at the end where they are using it to put like the cream for butter. So that reflects imagine how the floor of that plant is. It's filthy with dirty water, practically in conditions that should not be accepted to produce cheese. And this is a picture of a workshop where both farmers, extensionists, and researchers started discussing what are the needs of the research needs that will be developed in the project. There's James Turner, the specialist from Agri-Research, who is helping us in this component number 3. Now, Miranda Hunter will be with us. An applause for her, please. So, we need a microphone so we can do the translation. Nueva Zelanda es un país que está bastante lejos de acá.
Farm at the altitude you do in Peru?
En Nueva Zelanda no se hace ganadería a las altitudes como las que se hace en Perú.
Because we're so far south, we have similar climatic conditions to Peru.
Sin embargo, tenemos en algunas partes de Nueva Zelanda condiciones climáticas similares a las que se encuentran en Perú.
So in the south of the South Island of New Zealand, our pasture growth curve is very similar to Puno and Cusco.
En la parte más sur de la isla sur, también la tasa de crecimiento son relativamente similares de pasto que en Perú.
And in the Waikato area of New Zealand, it's very similar to Cajamarca.
Y el crecimiento en Waikato, en la isla norte de Nueva Zelanda, a lo mejor son similares a las de Cajamarca. Sorry. Yeah.
So agriculture makes up 53% of New Zealand's exports.
La agricultura de Nueva Zelanda es parte del 53% de las exportaciones del país.
And milk production is a key part of those exports.
Y la producción lechera es fundamental componente de ese volumen de exportación.
So whilst we only have 3% of the real milk production,
la leche que se produce en Nueva Zelanda es solamente el 3% de la producción total mundial.
Due to our low population of just over 4 million people, 95% of our milk is exported.
Sin embargo, por la cantidad de habitantes, alrededor de 4 millones, 95% de la producción de leche de Nueva Zelanda se tiene que exportar.
So that means New Zealand provides 33% of the international market in milk.
Entonces Nueva Zelanda es partícipe del 33% del mercado internacional de la leche.
Gracias. Over 90% of our milk is sold through farmer-owned cooperatives.
El 92% de la leche que se produce se vende a cooperativas que son propiedad de los productores.
And the largest of those is Fonterra.
Y Fonterra es la más grande de todas.
And up until the 1980s, New Zealand farmers had subsidies.
Hasta antes de los años 80, los productores de Nueva Zelanda recibían subsidios.
Our farmers now receive no subsidies.
Actualmente ellos no reciben ningún subsidio.
Okay. So this picture shows cows coming to the shed to be milked.
Esta foto nos muestra a las vacas que están llegando a la sala de ordeño.
Our cows are in pasture day and night.
Las vacas están en pastura día y noche,
And the only time they are removed from pasture is to be milked.
excepto durante el ordeño o durante los ordeños.
Okay, so just to describe a typical farm,
Es una granja promedio neozelandés.
they're around about 146 hectares with 420 cows.
Aprox 146 hectáreas de pastura efectiva con 420 vacas en ordeño.
And a farm that size is operated by 2 to 3 people.
Operada por 2 a 3 personas.
We have a seasonal calving pattern with cows having a calf each year.
Hay una parición estacional una vez al año y las vacas tienen que parir cada 365 días.
Our stocking rate is around 2.9 cows per hectare, with them producing 4,500 litres per cow.
La carga animal es 2.9 vacas por hectárea, produciendo 4.500 litros por vaca por lactación, o 13.000 litros por hectárea.
And we have a lactation length of around 270 days.
Y 270 días de longitud de lactación.
Cows average around 7 lactations in the herd.
En promedio, las vacas duran 7 años en 7 lactaciones en el hato.
And we really focus on the cost of production with low input systems.
Entonces se enfoca en los costos de producción, tratando de siempre producir al menor costo posible.
And our farmers are paid on the basis of milk solids.
Y los productores reciben la paga de la leche en base a los sólidos de leche, que es proteína y grasa. Y el pasto es el 90-95% de la dieta de la vaca.
Okay, this pie graph shows the range of breeds we predominantly have in New Zealand.
Este pie representa las razas que se tienen en Nueva Zelanda para producir leche.
And our predominant breed is what we call the Kiwi Cross.
La raza predominante es lo que se llama Kiwi Cross,
which is a cross between the Holstein and the Jersey.
Que es un cruce entre Friesian y Jersey. Seguido por Holstein Friesian y un poco de componente de Jersey y otras razas.
We focus on breeding cows that are production focused to make profit for our farmers.
Ellos se enfocan en hacer una genética animal que le den rentabilidad al ganadero.
So you'll see in that top photo our herds don't look uniform.
Entonces ustedes pueden ver en la foto de arriba que el color de las vacas no es uniforme.
Because we're focused on cows that produce milk profitably.
Porque ellos se enfocan en vacas que produzcan leche en forma rentable para el ganadero.
Gracias. Okay. So, as Jorge and others have talked about, this project is not about transplanting New Zealand systems.
Como Jorge y otros ya indicaron, no tratamos de implementar o trasplantar los sistemas de Nueva Zelanda así como tal.
It is about bringing New Zealand key principles and adapting and validating those to Peru.
Sino traer los principios claves del sistema neozelandés y aplicarlos o validarlos a las condiciones de los Andes o de la Sierra.
So I will now go through the range of the key principles that are important in New Zealand.
Entonces ahora voy a hablar de los principios claves del sistema neozelandés.
The first one is we work in whole farm systems.
El primero es que nosotros trabajamos en lo que es el sistema de finca como un conjunto holístico.
We do not work in components.
No trabajamos en componentes de ese sistema, sino en el concepto holístico.
So the family goals are fundamental.
Las metas de la familia es fundamental en este concepto.
And before we make any changes to our farm system, we analyze it in the context of a whole farm system.
Y cualquier intervención que hagamos en el sistema lo analizamos en el contexto de la finca como un todo.
Gracias. This is a diagram of how we see a whole farm system.
Este es un diagrama como los ganaderos ven el sistema el concepto de finca como un todo.
So our farmers use their resources, their inputs and management to produce good quality milk.
Entonces los productores usan los recursos, los inputs y el manejo para producir un producto y ganar dinero.
A key point of our farmers is they're always collecting data and information.
Y un aspecto fundamental es que los ganaderos siempre están colectando data e información para ser utilizados en la finca.
And they are using key performance indicators and benchmark their systems.
Entonces ellos determinan y usan los indicadores claves de performance para hacer benchmark en su granja con otras granjas y determinar las brechas que ellos quieren superar.
Okay, then the farmers review their systems continually to make changes.
Entonces los productores revisan este concepto cada cierto tiempo y continuamente están haciendo cambios para mejorar el sistema.
But the overarching principle is the goals of that farm and that family.
Pero el principio fundamental en esto son las metas del productor y de su familia en conjunto.
Okay. The second key principle we have in New Zealand is focusing on the cost of production.
El segundo principio es el enfoque en el costo de producción.
So to do this, we manage our pastures.
Para esto tenemos que manejar bien nuestras pasturas.
Because we want resilient farm businesses.
Porque necesitamos tener sistemas de finca resilientes.
So we're focusing on homegrown feed.
Entonces nos enfocamos en el alimento que se crece en la finca.
Because that is our cheapest source of good quality feed.
Porque definitivamente eso es lo que es la fuente más barata de nutrientes para los animales.
So that gives us a resilient farm business.
Y eso nos da fincas resilientes.
And here is an example of some of our cows eating pasture.
Y este es un ejemplo cómo las vacas están consumiendo pasto porque se quiere que haya una producción y utilización eficiente de la pastura.
Okay. Notice the focus on very high quality feed.
Ese enfoque en una pastura de muy alta calidad.
That is absolutely key to our farm system.
Y esto es clave para nuestras fincas.
So we're focusing on feeding our cows not only a good quantity of feed, but a high quality of pastoral feed.
Entonces nos enfocamos no solamente en dar cantidad de alimento, sino calidad alta de alimento en forma consistente.
So I mentioned that some of our pasture growth curves in New Zealand are similar to Peru.
Ya mencioné que hay algunas curvas de pastura, crecimiento de pastura durante el año esta de azul, puede ser similar a algunas partes en Perú.
So down the bottom of the graph we have the months of the year,
Y acá en este eje tenemos los meses del año, empezando en junio,
and then up the side the materia seca per hectare per
y
day.
en este eje tenemos la tasa de crecimiento de pastura en kilos de materia seca por hectárea por día.
The blue line is our pasture growth curve,
La línea azul es el crecimiento, la curva de crecimiento de la pastura por hectárea por día,
and the red line is the animal demand.
y la línea roja es la demanda de alimento por el hato.
So I emphasise this is one growth curve for one part of New Zealand. It changes depending on which part you're in.
Hay que mencionar que esta curva es única para cada localidad de Nueva Zelanda y todas las localidades tienen sus propias curvas de crecimiento que se conocen en promedio.
So what we have done over the years is developed our farm systems and our feed bases
Entonces, a través de los años se ha elaborado los sistemas de finca basado en lo que es el piso forrajero
to align our supply and demand as closely as we can.
para sincronizar o alinear las curvas de crecimiento de pastura con la demanda de pastura por el hato, una sincronización.
This is a key technology and skill from New Zealand that our farmers use.
Esta es una capacidad clave que opera en Nueva Zelanda en las fincas de producción de leche.
So they're moving surpluses of pasture to a time when we have shortages of pasture.
Y como consecuencia de esta sincronización va a haber siempre un exceso de pastura que tenemos que salvar para las épocas de necesidad, que es cuando el pasto ya no crece.
So this goes back to our cost of production of building resilient farm systems.
Y aquí estamos hablando de reducir los costos de producción y a la vez de edificar sistemas de finca resilientes.
From predominantly homegrown feeds.
Predominantemente de pasto que se crece en la finca, no pasto que se trae de afuera de la finca.
Okay, next. So, to expand on the key principle of cost of production,
Para expandir un poco más sobre el otro principio que es el costo de producción,
next one. Okay, this graph shows the milk powder prices over the years.
este gráfico muestra el precio mundial de la leche en polvo a través de los años
On the international markets.
en el mercado internacional.
So, New Zealand supplies over 90% of its milk onto the international markets.
Ya se dijo que Nueva Zelanda suministra más del 90% de su producción nacional al mercado internacional de la leche.
So, we really feel the impact of change of international prices.
Entonces los productores neozelandeses realmente sienten el impacto cuando los precios de la leche en el mercado internacional cambian drásticamente o bruscamente.
So you can see from this graph how volatile those prices are.
Entonces aquí pueden ver cuán volátil es el precio internacional de la leche.
So the way our farmers cope with that is focusing on the cost of production.
Entonces como los productores no pueden controlar esto, ellos tienen que enfocarse en el costo de producción, reducir el costo de producción para tener margen.
Next one. Okay, so this graph, this pie graph shows how farmers break down their costs.
Este gráfico muestra cómo los productores, el componente de costos o de gastos.
So Caesar,
Para un productor propietario, podrán ver que, por ejemplo, el costo de salud animal y reproducción es alrededor 5%. El alimento es, en todo sistema sabemos de producción de leche, el alimento es el mayor componente de los costos de producción. En Nueva Zelanda el interés que se paga al capital también es un alto componente de estos gastos.
okay. So farmers want to see a return from all their items of expenditure.
Entonces los productores necesitan saber el retorno de todos estos componentes de gastos que ellos hacen.
They look at any item they purchase and and relate what return they're going to get from that.
Entonces, cualquier gasto que ellos tienen que decidir en el gasto, tienen que ver cómo va a impactar en el retorno o en la rentabilidad.
So if we compare that with a lot of European systems,
Si comparamos el sistema neozelandés con los sistemas que operan en Europa, caso Dinamarca, Irlanda,
you will see they use a lot more concentrates and bought-in feeds than we do.
entonces, por ejemplo, en Dinamarca ellos usan en la lechería un montón de concentrados y silajes que de repente se compran.
Because our farmers are not subsidised and deal in very volatile international markets,
Ya que en Nueva Zelanda no hay subsidios y estamos con el precio internacional de la leche bastante volátil,
they have developed very profitable systems based on pastoral systems.
tenemos que desarrollar sistemas que sean rentables, pero basados en pastura, que es pastoreado por las vacas, ni siquiera corte y carga, sino que se pastorea.
Okay. So the fourth key principle
El cuarto principio clave
is our farmers use information to make decisions.
Nuestros productores usan información para la toma de decisiones
And there is research and data to support our farmers.
y hay investigación y datos disponibles que soportan este proceso.
Our farmers keep records and compare those with other farmers.
Los productores mantienen récords y comparan se hacen benchmarking.
Okay,
Sorry.
cool.
Yeah.
One. Okay. Key principle 5.
Principio 5, clave.
Yeah. So, to me, this is one of the most important key principles we have in New Zealand.
Para mí este es el principio clave más importante en Nueva Zelanda.
We concentrate on building our farmer capability.
Nos concentramos en edificar las capacidades de los productores,
Farmers make complex decisions.
porque los productores tienen que hacer decisiones complejas.
So, we're building their capability, we're not giving them recipes.
Levantamos o edificamos sus capacidades y no damos recetas.
We have extension and education systems focused on building that farmer capability.
Tenemos sistemas de extensión y educación que contribuyen a la construcción de estas capacidades en los productores.
And very, very importantly, we focus on farmer-to-farmer learning.
Y muy importantemente nosotros nos enfocamos en el sistema de aprendizaje de un productor a otros productores.
And to do that, we have mass extension systems.
Y para eso usamos sistemas de extensión masiva o en masa.
So what that means is we bring groups of farmers together to learn,
Entonces eso implica traer un grupo de productores para que aprendan juntos,
and that allows one extension officer to operate with about 250 farmers over time.
entonces un extensionista puede facilitar esta operación con 200 ganaderos al mismo tiempo.
So that farmer-to-farmer learning is a very important part of our systems.
Entonces ese sistema de aprendizaje de productor a productor es un componente muy importante del sistema.
Key principle 6 is we have farmer-centered
El número 6 es la investigación, extensión y desarrollo centrados en el usuario, en el ganadero.
So farmers pay a levy to Dairy NZ to support research, development and extension.
Entonces cada ganadero paga un autogravamen a Dairy NZ basado en los kilos de sólidos de leche que vende o que Fonterra vende en el mercado internacional.
And to ensure that it maintains its farmer-centered focus,
Y para asegurar que Dairy NZ lleva a cabo estas actividades direccionados a lo que los productores necesitan.
okay,
Ellos son parte del directorio de Dairy NZ.
okay, gracias. So, an example of our research is New Zealand has bred cows to convert pasture into milk profitably.
En Nueva Zelanda, la parte genética de Nueva Zelanda es que se hace que las vacas lecheras al pastorear sean capaces de convertir eficientemente la pastura que se produce en finca en ganancia neta, en rentabilidad.
Okay, we have bred cows to use pasture, which is our feed base, to make profit.
Entonces hemos creado unas razas ya para convertir esto eficientemente en dinero neto.
Gracias. Okay, key principle number 7 is collaboration.
Otro principio es la colaboración.
We have strong linkages between our institutions
Tenemos fuertes interrelaciones entre nuestras instituciones
who are focused on the benefit of our farmers.
y todos enfocados en el beneficio del productor.
We have an integrated and coordinated structure
Es una estructura integrada y coordinada
with a very collaborative attitude.
con una actitud colaborativa o colegiada de la industria.
Gracias. This diagram shows some of the institutions that work with our farmers.
Este diagrama muestra algunas de las instituciones que colaboran en beneficio de los productores.
This is led by the New Zealand government,
Esto es liderado por el gobierno de Nueva Zelanda
and universities and research institutions are key partners.
y las universidades y los centros de investigación son colaboradores claves.
Industry is also key in this.
La industria también es clave en este network, en esta colaboración.
And commercial organisations also link in.
Y también las organizaciones comerciales.
So all these organisations are focused on providing a benefit to our farmers.
Todas estas organizaciones están enfocadas en dar beneficio a los productores, trabajar en conjunto.
Okay, gracias. So here's a summary of the key principles from New Zealand.
En resumen de estos principios claves.
And I refer back to the fact that we want to adapt and validate these in Peru.
Y entonces regresamos a lo que queremos. Lo que queremos es validar y adaptar estos principios a Perú, a los Andes.
It is not about transplanting.
No se trata de trasplantar estos sistemas tampoco.
Caesar, can you read through those for me?
Ya, entonces hemos tratado lo que es el sistema de finca, manejo de pasturas, porque es lo más barato que podemos tener como fuente de alimento, enfoque en costos de producción, información, la toma de registros para la toma de decisiones por el ganadero, construcción de capacidades, investigación, extensión y desarrollo centrados en el usuario, en el ganadero, y colaboración a través de una estructura integrada y organizada de la industria.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Bien, en lo que
in this time I will try to go fast with my presentation. My question that I have in order to create more discussion is, if in the Andes we can do a sustainable intensification of the milk production, so we have information from other latitudes that it's known that the warm in the Andes is higher than in lower parts. That's a fact. Here we have a slide from Umachiri Puno. As you know, we have a curve of rain with a corrected a moment of dry period, and the temperature, well, we know that it's all getting higher at the time, and also the minimum temperatures are getting lower, with some weather events that are more frequent, extreme weathers. Also, because of the altitude and latitude, we know that the Andes are more exposed to ultraviolet rays. This is a study that it was done in 2014. There are 2 published works. So we know that radiation is higher in the Andes. What happens with this UV radiation? How does that affect the living beings? Well, in animals it can cause cancer, for example, and in plants, in the forage species, what happens, it increases the concentration of the phenolics and the flavonoids in the leaves, and that's what it's shown when we compared the effect on the Tibetan plateau versus the Mongolian one, that it's lower. So we know that when the animal eats phenolics or flavonoids, that's going to disturb the fermentation. So we know that the altitude, there needs to be adaptation, and we have here a comparison of the yak versus the bovine. This is a correlation, and you can see here that this is the respiratory system and the circulatory system that differ more in these species, in the yak versus bovine, because of the adaptation. Also, there is some research that indicates that with altitude, the energy requirements increase for metabolism, and also the water requirements that complicates even more in the altitude, because there's no much water in the altitude like in Puno, and the availability of food also decreases. So it has many negative consequences for the living beings. In the altitude versus the food conversion in, for example, in these cows. So for example, when there's good nutrition, it's blue, and when bad nutrition is the red line. So in this part, in the altitude, for example, in high altitude and low altitude. So as you can see, when it's higher altitude, they need to eat more, and also the milk production is lower. That's for cows are not adapted to altitude, and also that's why also the food requirements it's lower. Another study is in the altitude versus the fermentation. When we have here this study, you can see that in high altitude it's lower. The digestion of organic matter is also much lower than in lower altitudes. And so something important is the basal metabolism in high altitude. It's higher than in lower altitudes. This study compared animals that are adapted to a high altitude versus species that live in lower parts. So we have here the limit is 3,000 meters above sea level. Here we have a study, an in vitro study, where it indicates that the methane is more adapted to, for example, the jack, the methane. So for example, the sheep here, for example, is not adapted versus a sheep that is not adapted. Again, also, the production of fatty acids in the cattle is lower than I'm sorry that I'm going really fast, but we don't have much time. So this is a study that compared New Zealand cows versus American cows. So here in lower pastures and higher pastures, as you can see here, that you can see how is the reproduction rate in both cases. The New Zealand cows, it has a lower one, and here also you can see how the production of milk, fat and protein is higher for the New Zealand cows in pastures. And this is more important, the volume ruminal cow from the US had a content of 80 kilos, while the New Zealand cow, that it was smaller, it had 120 kilos. So that indicates that what we need to consider when we take a cow to a pasture system. We know that maybe 30 years ago in Puno, there was a production system that was different, and there were like companies, associations, but later in the time, then we had also the milking cows. But in this process, we are not considering in order to improve the forage. So what I think is like the forage has been deteriorated in this period of time. There are also weather conditions that and there's lack of acclimatization from the cows. So there is like a phenomenon of intervention. For example, here they are vaccinating against the cold. I don't know what's the sense of this, but again here we created these special areas for the feedlot, so animals cannot die. But why animals die? Because they don't have enough reserves. They are thin, and there's no enough food during the times of like cold weather. So, and step by step, and then they are, for example, they just take in the pastures in even with donkeys for the cows, and they need to build special places so the cows can stay there. And unfortunately, before when I was a student, we were talking a lot about the high altitude sickness. And now it's something very, very strange to find information about high altitude sickness. And what I think is very interesting is they are using antibiotics to cure the high altitude sickness. We have here an example. What happens with genetics? Genetics in the Andes is basically in Puno and Cusco is based on exogen genetics. There's a great promotion of bringing exogen genetics, and they are talking about transfer of embryos. But we forget that these cows, they need more requirements than the local cows. Who do they promote livestock? Now the mining companies, everybody is talking about like genetic improvement. And it's very interesting that now there are more livestock fairs where they are selling different cows. But they don't talk about the adaptability of these animals. The Creole cow, we forgot about it. In Puno, that you need to be really lucky to find this species of cow. This is the forage that we have right now in Puno for the milk cows, like the brown Swiss. So if we see the wellness, the animal wellness, they are just suffering from, they are like tied, they are under the sun, eating maybe oats. This is natural pastures. Look at their ribs, they are in bad conditions. All of this because there are variations during the whole year. But in our production curve is this. Maybe we don't know really what is the production curve in every locality. This is from the 70s when the project was before project was happening there. But there are no measure. The production is not measured. Again, in pastures, we bring seeds and they are planted without any research. And so right now, for example, we have the alfalfa here. It's quite resilient, but it brings also some problems because here we need to feed them with natural pastures, or for example, oat hay that it's not really good quality. And for example, here in this part here has like 3 years, and we get together always there, and the resilience to like cold parts, well, it's always a problem. Natural pastures, that's the main food for these animals, especially. We do have technology, and probably that it was developed here in the university in order to manage natural pastures. For example, here this is a chilwai, this is a white clover. We do have it, but we are not applying it. So with the great demand of food, the natural pastures, they be cultivated with a lot of profit. And So the natural pastures, they last 2 or 3 years with luck. Also, there's a lot of presence of general plants, like, and also, for example, in this case, didn't allow the oats to grow. For example, it's the oat hay is the one that is produced in Puno. It looks kind of like the straw of the rice, but we're still very young in the production of silage. When the people they try to work on that, the silage gets ruined. You can see here it was rotten, and many people they they want to think about other resources. They are using Sylvester like turnip, which is quite a toxic plant for the cows. They are using totora for the cows, and also you have here different kinds. And what they are trying to use is like, they call it concentrated, but it's basically fiber. Another aspect is the water. The animal needs to drink 2 or 3 times a day. So I think here we're providing water to a cow that it was quite thirsty, and the ladies are quite surprised that the cow was quite thirsty. So in order to sum up, that the livestock in the Andes, it's based on models that are from the cost. So right now we're in charge of training professionals and extensionists, we need to think about that. And for that, we need to design and adequate or adapt production systems that are profitable and sustainable to the conditions and existing resources in the Andes. Thank you very much. We thank the expositor. If there are questions, you can make them now. We have the different ladies who have the microphones. So for matters of time, maybe we have maybe opportunity for 3 questions. Somebody would like to pose a question? Yes. It caught my attention, but the profitability, when you were exposing the cost structure, the rentability of 2.2%, or maybe in profitability of the systems. In the structure of costs, you were talking about the percentages. There are 2 things that call my attention: the low profitability and also the high interest. I don't know if we can discuss that part.
As I mentioned earlier, our farmers are paid per kilo of milk solids.
Los productores son pagados en lo que es kilo de leche, grasa y proteína.
But when you convert that to litres and to sol, our farmers are paid in the last 4 years between 80 cents and a sol 20.
Entonces, si comparamos, traemos los datos a litros de leche, en Nueva Zelanda los productores reciben entre 80 centavos a un sol 20 por litro de leche. Esa es la paga que ellos reciben.
This shows how volatile the price of our milk is.
Y esto demuestra cuán volátil es el precio de la leche.
The average cost of production for a New Zealand farmer, we can talk about in terms of a break-even milk price.
Entonces dice, si nos referimos al costo de producción promedio de leche en Nueva Zelanda, podríamos usar el término de punto de equilibrio, creo que es el break-even. Yes.
Okay. So break-even milk price includes what we would call operational costs. It includes the costs of interest, capital costs, tax, and the cost of the family.
Entonces el punto de equilibrio que ellos utilizan allá es los gastos de operación de la finca, gastos de interés que tienen que pagar al capital y también los gastos que la familia en la finca utiliza, por decir, alimentos, ropa, educación, etc.
Okay. So in Peruvian terms, our break-even milk price is about 1 sol per litre of milk.
Entonces, dice ese punto de equilibrio es aproximadamente un sol, pero en ese un sol ya está incluido tus gastos de la familia, comida, alojamiento, esas cosas.
Okay. So therefore our farmers operate on very tight margins.
Entonces, es una realidad que los productores operan en un ambiente donde hay un margen muy estrecho para ganar dinero.
They treat their farms as business and are very aggressive about their cost of production, so they make profit in that business on those tight margins.
Entonces ellos consideran la finca como un negocio y tienen que tratar de reducir sus costos de producción a lo mínimo. No sé si respondió la pregunta. Yeah.
I think the question, Miranda, is about the aggressiveness of I think the question is about the willingness of New Zealand farmers also to take on debt. The question which
La pregunta que también me sorprendió es el 75% en el presupuesto sobre los intereses.
So our cost of land is high.
El precio de las tierras lecheras es bastante alto.
So our farmers depend on banks to lend them money to help them fund that cost of land.
Entonces los productores necesitan prestarse dinero de los bancos para operar en la tierra, en el suelo, en las tierras.
And as I'm sure you're aware, banks deal in risk. Banks deal in risk. The banks look at risk.
Ya. Los bancos siempre te están considerando riesgo antes de prestar.
Okay. So for banks to be convinced to lend money to farmers, farmers need to prove they can operate their businesses profitably and have strong control around their businesses.
Entonces, antes de prestar dinero a los bancos, tienen que asegurarse que va a haber realmente esa capacidad de que lo van a recuperar. Entonces, tienen que asegurarse que los productores tienen control del sistema.
This allows Kiwi farmers to grow their businesses with the support of their banks.
Entonces esto permite que los productores hagan su operación con el soporte de los bancos.
El doctor Chávez acá.
Thank you very much. Listen to the exposition the last moment. You were talking a very depressing situation of the livestock in the altitude, especially in Puno. So, and listening to the expositor, they were telling us that the livestock is an extension. So it allows us to lower the cost. So we can do, when the lands in Puno have divided and the former partners from this association has little parts of the land. So they are convinced so they can use, species exported. That shows that there's no policy, agricultural policy in our country. That's the main problem. We want just to put kind of makeup of the current situation of our farmers with these wrong policies. There's no extension. The extension that you have is just little parts that happen in the country, but really the farmer, the agriculture in our system is completely abandoned in regards to So in regards to the labeling, what are the norms that prevail in the sale of milk at the supermarket?
Obviously, so as I mentioned, most of our milk is exported.
Como ya dijo que la mayor parte de la leche se exporta.
And most of that is done through cooperative systems.
Y mayoría se vende a través de cooperativas, sistema cooperativo.
So this export market is our real focus.
Y esto es donde el mercado, la industria se enfoca.
So for farmers, what that means is we need to focus on a very good quality of milk product and traceability of our product.
Todos los productores se enfocan en lo que es calidad altísima del producto y la trazabilidad.
Because we know most of our product will be exported and our markets are very demanding of the quality of the product that they receive.
Esto es porque los consumidores siempre están demandando la calidad del producto que ellos van a comprar.
So comparatively, our domestic market is very small.
Comparativamente, el mercado doméstico es muy pequeño.
But what that means is the same stringent measures applied over the way we operate our domestic market.
Entonces, igualmente la calidad para el mercado doméstico es lo mismo.
So most of the packaging in the domestic market is obviously for the home user and for our ingredients market locally.
Entonces el empaque se refiere para el uso diario, también para usar ingredientes en la industria de alimentos.
And in terms of our export market, where our packaging is, we have commodity products, but there is also a large portion of our product that goes into value add.
Entonces, para el mercado externo se vende como commodity, pero también hay productos con valor añadido.
So increasingly we're working with our consumers overseas to target specific products and specific production for their needs.
Entonces, continuamente ellos están evaluando, conversando con los consumidores en el extranjero para satisfacer las necesidades de los consumidores.
A good example of this is the Chinese market, who we sell baby milk formula to, and they have a real strong focus to the traceability, food safety, and knowing it comes from pasture-fed product.
Y un ejemplo es el mercado chino, donde se están enfocando en para bebés, para niños. No se me olvida. y ellos están conscientes de la trazabilidad bajo un sistema pastoral.
Muy bien.
Is there any question? We will allow one more question, so we can go later to the coffee break, so you can talk later to the people who are presenting. I think the person is there. Understanding that the cow is in pasture, what is the requirement per hectare of the availability of water, and if at that level, the level is the same required for Peru, for associated pastures?
One thing I've noticed working in South America, as I work in both Colombia and Peru,
Mi experiencia de trabajo en Perú y Colombia actualmente
is how the cows are restricted from water.
es de que cuán severos somos en restringir a las vacas al acceso al agua.
Water is a very important component, and nothing will affect a cow's production like lack of water.
El agua es muy importante, no hay otro factor después del alimento que pueda afectar la producción de leche en la vaca, por la vaca.
So it'll be feed quality and heat that will predominantly influence the water intakes.
Es calidad de alimento y el tiempo, o calor por decir, o la insulación o la radiación que puede afectar, incrementar el consumo de agua por el animal.
And the impact of altitude I haven't seen a lot of work on.
Entonces no tenemos información cuál es el impacto de la altitud en el consumo de agua o los requerimientos de agua.
I was working with a group of farmers 2 days ago and got asked the question how much water a cow needed.
Dice, hace 2 días estuve trabajando con un grupo de productores en Cusco y Puno y me preguntó cuántos litros de agua debería consumir sus vacas.
They were very surprised when I said it would range between 70 and 120 litres per cow.
Ellos estuvieron bastante sorprendidos cuando ella dijo que una vaca debería consumir entre 70 y 120 litros de agua limpia por día.
I strongly believe providing cows in Peru with free access to water will lift production.
Y esta cantidad debería darse al animal permanentemente para permitir que la vaca exprese su potencial de producción.
Muy bien. Queremos agradecer a nuestros expositores.
We want to thank the expositors. Questions can be for at the end of this workshop where the expositors will be at the panel, and then we will be able to pose the different questions that we have. So right now we will have the presentation of projects of PINIA that are aligned with the value chain projects. So we want to invite Dr. Blanca Arce. She's an expert in the management and development of agricultural services. She has more than 20 years of experience, for example, in the research project and also in agriculture, also at international and national level, rural development, agribusiness, and also productive chain, and also management of natural resources. Currently, she is in charge of the Executive Directorate of Agriculture Innovation, PINIA. Doctor, please. Can you hear me? No. No. No, we cannot hear you. What happens is I'm too petite and maybe you won't be able to see me. Maybe here, can you hear me now? Okay. Well, good morning. Especially special greetings to the Ambassador of New Zealand and the different authorities in this very important event. This presentation will be about the PINIA, the national program. This is an executive unit of agriculture innovation. I want to present what is the program doing right now and some of the projects that they are being funded in cooperation with New Zealand. So I want to start specifically talking about the objective of the program, which is to contribute to the establishment and consolidation of a modern national system of science. And it is with the aim to strengthen the agricultural system in a decentralized way, oriented by the demand and in association with the private sector. This is according to the bylaws of the PINIA. So this program is designed and it's formulated under these statutes. What is the structure of the program? We have two projects. This basically it's the two public investment. The first project that it's called the consolidation of agricultural innovation, and the objective is to promote adequate conditions so the technology can be established in Peru and support the agricultural sector. This is also with funding from the World Bank with $40 million. And the second project is about the improvement of strategic services of innovation so we want to strengthen PINIA as the main institute about innovation. And this is also we have from the BIF funding with also $40 million, and also the government is providing funding, in total $176 million. Both projects, we hope to have a result of an increase of agriculture innovation in Peru in order to have a good impact in the increase of the competitiveness of agriculture in Peru. So we want PINIAS to be a leader in the agricultural sector. And the key element is to work on innovation. I think now you can hear me better. I'm the same as in Cesar because we are quite petite, so we cannot be there at the podium. Okay. As I was telling you, these are the two main projects that we're working on, and how is this consolidation of the national system of agriculture innovation working? All the actors are involved from the innovation area, from the agriculture area as well. We're talking about universities, organizations, private sector, unions. Basically is developed the area of the strengthening of service markets, and we want to promote the markets of agricultural services. We want to also drive the creation of strategic competences through scholarships and internships to promote human capital. In terms of improvement also of training of India in the area of innovation, specifically agriculture innovation. The third activity that also we have in this public investment is the improvement of the capabilities of India as an institute, and we're working on three specific lines. The management of knowledge, so we can transmit all the information that is being produced from these different actors, from these different chains, for example, in the dairy chain. So in this, for example, in this event, we want to see what information does the university has. Can you hear me? What information have the regional universities, the associations about the dairy chain, so we can exchange and facilitate information that is being developed at national level. So we are also developing platforms. There's also exchange of experiences of innovative programs. We're gonna do some awards, some of the innovation projects that we have. The second part is the policies and the perspective. We're also designing the national policy of agriculture innovation. We were also listening that we are requiring a policy, and we are designing it because if we don't have proper lines or policies, we won't be able to improve the competitiveness of agriculture. And the last part that we are working to strengthen PNIA is also the institution. So we're working on mechanisms so the agricultural system can be consolidated as Can you hear me? How the actors of the national system of agriculture can be articulated, for example, through the dairy, in the dairy chain. What mechanisms can we propose? The commissions, the committees, the experimental stations from the PINIA, what actions we are going to implement so we can respond to a regional demand. The second project is the improvement, basically, of the strengthening of the piña. The actors are all of them at national level. Also to strengthen the human capital resources, the experimental stations, the equipment, trainings, to achieve a modernization, so Piña can reach its objectives. The important here is that in February, the Piña now is a technical organism, and it allows us to have an independence, so it can search for its own funds and can be more independent. If we are going to see all the different funding projects, that's the first public project, which is the consolidation of the agricultural system. Since 2015 to 2017, we have a total of 686 sub-projects at national level, divided in different types of funding: strategic investment, extension services, adaptive research, development of enterprises. Well, we are doing all this. The investment in total is of $51 million. Starting from this year, what we're doing is like follow-ups to these different projects, because we already called for the applications last year, and we see that most of the projects have been assigned to the services of extension. If we see here at level of types of strategic research, it is basically aimed at universities. We have here, it's linked to coffee, cacao, potato, quinoa. Also we have here sugarcane, and also milk cows. And also there's a greater percentage, because there are some products that are defined as specific. We have also blueberries. We also have here goats, and also we have here 6 universities involved, 4 public and private entities, and we have Piña has supported with $15 million. And basically we're talking about trade production, seeds, etc. The followings of extension, and the main objectives are to facilitate the adoption and application of technologies that can improve all different aspects of the rural agricultural businesses, including business innovations in small farmers. Also, we have 402 projects, and most of them in this case are for milk livestock. We have approximately 30 million beneficiaries. In the adaptive research, that it was one of the projects that we mentioned before, the idea is to have the adaptability of a technological good, and also here we have 142 sub-projects, and there's like a 10% almost that are milk cows, also coffee and cacao. And we have about 8,000 producers, and we have funded with $8 million. This is the 2 projects for the small, for these companies, and we're talking here about, there are like 52 organizations that have been co-funded, and most of these projects are in potato, in guinea pigs, in milk cows, and double purposes animals. And also we have here, and this depends, we're responding on the different demand of the regions. So the beneficiaries are about like 2,000 farmers, and the funding was $4 million. So the programs for then we have here 30 programs of training programs, and most of them are for the industrial cultures, and also in livestock. Also we have also that is more related to trade, for example, postgraduate, like trades or some courses for agriculture innovations. And we have 21 educational institutions that are involved, 205 producers, and we have $1.2 million. This list of the different projects that I just presented, what are the ones that are linked to the dairy chain? We have 89 projects that are linked to the dairy chain, and most of them are in the extension services, followed by adaptive research. Here we can see that mainly all the different projects are aiming at the limitations that have been defined about the primary production, basically on management of pastures, good livestock practices, and also the primary management, especially in cheeses, also in transformation. That could be, for example, yogurt, and not many in distribution and trade. All are aiming at improving the quality of the milk and traceability. Specifically, the projects that we have in collaboration with New Zealand, that Cesar already mentioned, and also Jorge, and they will talk in detail later, are 3 projects about the evaluation of pastures, where they are aiming at the expected result as an indicator of this about the market. These are the different projects that are linked to this different expected result, and in these 3 projects, it's in adaptive research, and PINIA it's funding it with $173,000, and then we have 2 other projects in the extension services that are aiming also to the market of agriculture innovation with $118,000 US. As intermediate results, so how are we measuring all these 600 projects and the ones that are in the dairy chain? We have here in this slide, we can see 2 important elements, that there is 198 projects that are promoting the adaptability of new technologies, and we have 558 projects that are promoting the transfer or adoption of new technologies. This is something very important because we want them to be adapted and adopted here, that are product of this project, so we can consolidate the innovation, the agriculture innovation program. So these are data that we have been analyzing in the intermediate evaluation in June 2017. Some of the indicators that were generated, and we're working on that, so we can meet the expected results of have good conditions to generate innovation. Is that medium and small farmers, they participate in these projects, and medium small farmers, they are promoting and they are adapting these technologies. Out of them, in the indicators, is 76% in regards to the participation, and in the adoption of this is the 47%. We really hope that when the projects finish next year, we can achieve the expected results, expected objectives. The next indicator is about the institutions that are participating in the INEA that have good satisfaction and with the cooperation of the system. The SNIA exists is an instrument to consolidate this program. So one of the indicators is that if they report satisfaction, and so when in fieldwork it almost reaches 25%. So we hope that we can increase these percentages. We have to work also a lot with SNIA through all the different experimental stations from the INEA, and promoting more committees, more work with the local governments and regional governments. And new emerging technologies of research projects that are validated on the field. So we have reached the 70% with the generation of different technologies from different adaptive research projects. as lessons learned from these funds, because we're also talking that different institutions from the agricultural sectors, they are also generating these funds with different methods or different instruments. We have made an analysis about the lessons learned, because these are funds that for innovation, agricultural innovation. We need to define the type of the beneficiary. We need to establish good criteria for the beneficiary, because we have different groups of beneficiaries. They are organized groups that are small and medium producers, farmers, but also we have farmer communities that they need also to be able to access to these funds. But the types of these applicants are different, so we need to generate a type so in order to respond to these different applicants, and also combine the demand. For example, we need to understand the demand, but the types of products, regions, organizations. Our country is quite varied. We have 3 natural regions. It's like 3 different countries, and each regions, they have their sub-regions. They are very different between each other. So we need to be quite clear what is the demand that will help us to do a better planning, a better execution, and make better decisions. Also, we need to revise what's going to be the maximum amount to be assigned, and we need to be able to differentiate, the project, like for example, the size, the location, the resources, because we're just giving one standard for all of them when sometimes there are different factors that we need to take into account. More integration between the INEA and PINEA. All of our projects that are at the national level, that for example at the universities or in private companies, we need to get together more through, for example, the PINEA experimental stations. And we need to work on the areas that are great areas for experiments, and sometimes the projects are quite isolated and they cannot apply for this funding. To implement funding for innovation in order for oriented to the development of capabilities in actors from the SNEA. So we need also to consider a mapping of the problems in the national agricultural sector, to use it as a tool to prioritize the different proposals. There are different regions. For example, potato can be produced in different regions, or for example, the milk can be produced in different regions, but we only have one chain, but we need to map the different problems along the chain. And also to improve, at the end, the coordination between the innovation funds, so there's like synergy. We want to generate standard instruments with all the lessons learned. Right now we're working with Innovate Peru to create just one platform of these instruments. And also we're working with Concitec. And we had already some working tables, because really these funds are required. They're important, but we need to adjust them better so they can have a better impact. Well, thank you very much. We want to thank Dr. Blancarce, and I want to point out that the questions, we're going to save them at the end of the presentation. At the end, we will have all the people who talked here will answer your questions. Thank you, Dr. Alce. So now we will have a coffee break. So I invite you to have some coffee that it will be served outside. Remember that we are a little bit late, so please come back in 10 minutes.
continuación,
Next, we will have the presentation, a Sustainable Livestock Platform, which will be done by Dr. Ipun. He's the representative of CATIA in Peru.
ya debe estar su presentación, supongo. ¿No está? Perdón. La persona que está a cargo de las presentaciones, por favor, si se puede.
Mientras tanto voy hablando.
Well, thank you very much. First, I want to greet all the authorities, the Vice Chancellor of the University of La Agraria, to the Ambassador of New Zealand, Jackie Kane, and the authorities from the Ministry of Agriculture, the Vice Minister, Dr. Benjamin Quijandría, who is the advisor of the High Directorate of the Ministry, and all of you colleagues. For me, it is an honor, really, to be here in this meeting. I'm coming back to my alma mater, and since 2 years I'm back in Peru. What I'm going to talk about today, it will be not only about the sustainable livestock platform that is being implemented, but I'm going to be talking about the sustainable intensification of livestock. I will talk a little bit about the support that we had through New Zealand and also Monteagro. And also I will be talking, I will be giving a general context of how we are moving in the world in regards to agriculture. How are we moving in Latin America? I'm going to describe a little bit what is Fonteagro and what is CATIA, where I'm working right now. And later I'm going to present some of the results that we have been implemented, supported both by Fonteagro and New Zealand, and also by CATIA. If we could have the first slide of my presentation. In what context are we moving right now in the world? We calculate that by 2050 we will have more than 9 million people and that the middle class will be increased in more than 3,000 million. What are the implications of this? Well, the first, there's going to be a sustainable change in the diet, as we have been appreciating now. The demand for animal products, meat, milk, eggs, fish will increase. Also, the demand for vegetables, fruits, and for healthy products will increase. On the other side, we also have the terrible threat of the weather change. This is a real problem. If we see some of the numbers of 1996 and 2015, we had many drastic events that have caused more than 500,000 deaths, and that has cost to the world more than $3 million of dollars. In English, it's like $3 billion of dollars. And only in the U.S., in the disasters, there have been like 111 disasters. They have caused losses for 1.5 trillions US dollars. So the climate change is a real threat, and we need to live with it, and we need to live with this reality. On the other side, we also have a great challenge in agriculture, which is to produce more than 70% of what we are producing, but practically in the same area. So before this reality, this paradigm that we are facing is the necessity to intensify the sustainable agriculture. So what is the context in Latin America? The urbanization and the economic growth, those are also realities of Latin America, and especially in the urban areas. Another thing that we have here in Latin America is we have lots of natural resources. We have the third part of the water in the world. We have more than 23% of cultivable farmlands, and most of the diverse countries are located here in Latin America. Also, our region that exports a lot. So we're exporting the 66% of the banana, 60% of soy, 45% of coffee, 44% of meat, cow and also chicken, and also 17% of pork. So it is a region that exports a lot, but also it is a region that is quite heterogeneous, because we cannot compare how agriculture is in the south from Latin America compared to how agriculture is in the Andean countries or how it is done in the central part of Latin America. Also, together with all this richness, in the case of livestock, Latin America also is contributing to almost a third part of the total emissions of greenhouse effect. And the livestock represents 18.4% of the total emissions. Another great reality of Latin America is the great proportion of whole farms that are family-owned. Most of the farm here are like family-owned, so the families are the ones working on these farms. These also, they are using the 35% of the cultivated land. They are the main workforce in the field, and also they are very important for the production of the different products that we consume. But there's a big contrast, is that we are investing low. Our investments are quite low in research and development, and in science and in technology. There's a number that I like to tell, and is that South Korea, being just a peninsula, invests more in education, science and technology than all Latin America together. So if we think what is the GDP of South Korea in the 60s, it was $100 per year per person, and it was quite similar to the GDP from Peru. But now, 50 years later, with some firm policies, investment policies in education, science and technology, the GDP of South Korea is 3 times the ones from Mexico, Brazil, Peru or Chile. In the case of research and development in agriculture, numbers are quite shocking. 8 out of the countries in Latin America, they invest less than 1% of the GDP, the agriculture GDP, and they only invest more than 1%. Only 4 countries invest more than 1% in the south part of Latin America: Brazil, Chile, Uruguay and Argentina. And Mexico and Costa Rica, they invest more than 1%. But the other countries, including Peru, they are investing less than 0.4% of the agriculture GDP. When I was listening to the presentation of Dr. Blanca, it's good that the previous government took a decision to invest in research and innovation in agriculture, because this PINIA project, it was prepared then, but also they invested a lot in Concitec and in other organizations that are promoting science and technology. Those policies, we need to keep them. We need to develop them in the long term. So I'm going to tell you what is Fontagro. Before this reality that in Latin America, there are many countries that are investing quite low in research and development and innovation. Maybe 20 years ago, cooperation mechanism was created called Fontagro. It is integrated by 15 countries, including Peru. And these countries are providing a capital that is now $100 million. It might seem quite not a lot of money for innovation in Latin America, but we should not forget that if we use these resources in a strategic manner, they will also create more investment in other countries. For $1 that Fontagro invests in a project, it mobilizes $5. 1.2 from other partners, like in the case from New Zealand or the World Bank, the Spanish corporation, the Japanese government, etc. And from other parts, also the national institutions invest $3.8 million. Sorry, $3.8 for each dollar that Fontagro invests. So in the 20 years, Fontagro has supported 120 projects for more than $98.4 million. One characteristic that Fontagro has is that it's sponsored by two organizations that are key. The Development Inter-American Bank, which is the main funding for development in Latin America, and the Cooperation Inter-American Institution for Latin America. So this different plan for the medium term, it says that the focus is the family agriculture from the reasons I explained before, and we are talking in 4 lines. The line of innovation, the technological, organizational, and institutional innovation, then the line of adaptation and mitigation of climate change, the sustainable intensification of agriculture and the management of natural resources, and also the value chain and the competitive areas. On the other side, I'm going to mention a little bit about CATI, since I'm now with them. Benjamin Quijandría, maybe he's going to remember it because we were together in CATI, and also Enrique Laoso, I saw him here. CATI is an institution that is dedicated to the research, to teaching, and also to the cooperation for development. It has 14 members, and all of them are from Latin America, from Mexico till Panama, from Central America. And in the case of South America, Colombia, Bolivia, Paraguay, and the state of Acre in Brazil. And the main programs of CATI are associated with the agriculture, livestock, and forestry, management of forest and basins, and also development, economy, and environment. CATI offers internships, also diplomats, scientific masters, professional masters, and also PhDs. And it has agreements among the different and agreements with 70 universities at world level. These are some figures about what CATI has obtained. CATI has formed more than 2,000 teachers from 43 countries, and in the case of Peru, 178 masters in science, 38 women, 140 men, and also more than 450 participants have gone through the international courses that CATI organized, including our dean. One of the things that also characterizes CATI is that it has a great bank, the biggest bank in regards to coffee and cacao. In coffee, there are more like 2,000 accessions, and in cacao, 1,300. And these have been conserved for many years. They are key for the different programs of genetic improvement. One of the examples that CATI has is that they have developed an F1 of coffee that has 30 to 50% more productivity. It adapts to different altitudes, It has good quality and also is resistant to the ROI. On the other side, among the different works that Katie has done in, for example, Central America, we've worked in 140 communities to strengthen their value chains. And also we have worked in different value chains like coffee, cacao, milk, honey, in cereals, and in other products. Also, through different the Katie schools, we have trained more than 10,500 professionals and farmers. We have developed silvopastorale systems, that those are neutral carbon, which are 30% more productive. The interesting thing is that most of these results, especially in livestock, they have adopted by the countries, like for example in the case of Honduras and Costa Rica, in order to prepare their plans of livestock plans. They've also been used in Panama and Costa Rica. In terms of the projects that are supported by Fontagro and by other partners, for example, like the Bank of Inter-American Development and the MPI, we have also supported a project about the greenhouse gases, and that is being implemented in Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Honduras. We also have a work that is being coordinated by the ITA and also the Agrarian University from Peru. And this project is being prepared in Ecuador, Colombia, and Bolivia. Also in strategies of adaptations to livestock systems through the improvement of pastures led by INEA in Chile, and the members are Argentina, Bolivia, and Costa Rica. It's a project in greenhouse emissions and also the livestock system, and where activities are being implemented in Argentina, Chile, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic. And then so finally we have a project that is a platform of the intensification of sustainable livestock, and 14 countries are participating in this. On this platform I'm going to talk. This platform has been recently launched in the last month. The coordinator is Katy. It's been established a directive committee where, besides Katy, also the ICA, the MPI, Fontagro, the INDE from Costa Rica, and the University from La Molina in Peru, and the INE from Uruguay. The initial funding for this platform comes from Fontagro, New Zealand, the fund from the environment, and Katy, and also the different members. I want to highlight here that in any activity, it is very important that the members invest in this, because that provides sustainability at the long term. If they depend on that the funding comes from external partners, we have the risk that once this funding finishes, then the activity finishes as well. So what are the activities that this platform will have? First, it will establish a regional agenda in the intensification of sustainable livestock. On the second, they will work on the exchange of knowledge and to provide technical support to the different countries and institutions. It will also on the management of knowledge, on the strengthening of capabilities or skills, and also in the preparation of proposals. Briefly, I will talk about some of the results that we had in some of the projects that I just mentioned. In the case of this project in Central America, led by Katy, we proved like 7 tools from the greenhouse emissions, and we created different statistics. But something very important is that we trained 9 professionals, and also we have had 4 theses. In the case of the project that is done in the Andean area, for example, milk in the dairy part, in the Andean part, well, Ricardo Gomez here will talk about it, so I'm not going to talk much about the results, but there's been a really good result in the training. In regards to the adapting of the livestock systems according to the climate change, in the case of Chile, we have increase in the production and livestock production. And in the case of Costa Rica and Bolivia, we have also an increase in almost 100% of the productivity. In the case of climate change, we've trained researchers from 5 countries, and we've done measurements of the greenhouse emissions in 3 countries. So I was telling that one of the most important activities that we've done in these activities is the strengthening of capabilities. In a course in a 2-week course that it was done in Chile, organized by INI, what we did was we trained 20 professionals from 11 countries. In another event that it was done with the Agrarian University here in Peru, we trained 12 professionals from 3 countries. And in the case of a workshop that it was organized, also a 2-week workshop, it was in Costa Rica. We trained 30 researchers from 14 countries. So these are some of the results. As you can see, once we improve the food, then the emissions in greenhouse are reduced. We've tried that in Chile. We have proved that in Chile and Uruguay. For example, the food maybe with concentrates, and also the factors of nitrogen we have determined it in the case of Chile, Colombia, Uruguay. Something that I want to highlight here with these results of these emissions is that one uses the equations of the ATCC to calculate the emissions. It tends to underestimate the emissions. Overestimate, the emissions. That's why it is very important to have their own emissions, because, for example, in Chile, we have found that 10% of what it is estimated, there's a difference if using their own statistics. So that happens that sometimes these statistics are overestimated. In the case of food, for example, in Bolivia, compared with natural pastures, because natural pastures, for example, like forage, we also found that they can double the productivity and they can reduce the greenhouse emissions. So as a conclusion and summary, I will mention that first, that a great effect that we get through the participation in this project is the strengthening of capabilities, and we have trained many researchers and professionals, more than 300 with these projects. Second, we have estimated that the greenhouse gas emissions we calculated under different situations. Third, that the coefficients of emissions that we found under our conditions, in some cases, have been lower than what was calculated using general equations from the IPC. Another point that is important is that the regional cooperation is very important. Many times we focus on our own problems from our areas, from our countries, but really cooperating with other countries, maybe from the region or maybe outside the region, like in the case of New Zealand, we can find synergies and we can get very positive results. We can obtain positive. And also wanted to mention that the results from many of these researchers, they just don't finish in publications or in validations, but many times they are being translated into policies. And this is the case of the livestock policies that have been created in Honduras and Costa Rica, and that they also have been implemented in regions in Panama and also in Nicaragua also. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos.
We thank Dr. Lipun. Thank you.
seguido,
Now we invite Dr. Carlos Gomez Bravo. He's one of the principal professors in the Faculty of Zootechny. He's a specialist in food in the area of livestock and climate change. He will come and present his next presentation.
Ya, gracias. Buenas.
Good afternoon. It's almost noon, I think. Following the program, and Dr. Lipun has already done an introduction to what is Fontagro, and here I'm going to present specifically a project from Fontagro. It has the name of Improvement of the Systems of Animal Production, with emphasis in milk livestock in the Andean region. What is the main objective of the project? To improve the positioning of the countries that are from the project in regards to two topics: to measure the emissions of methane and also to prioritize strategies to mitigate them. So these are the two main objectives of this project. This project is on its final stage. The amount here is the total amount is there's also the funding was done by Fontagro with also resources from the MPI. As I was telling you, this is a regional project. That means that there's a platform that it's composed by different institutions, like the ICA. In this case, this is the executive entity. We, as the university, we are the technical responsible of this project. And also we have colleagues that belong to 4 institutions. In Peru is INIA, the Institute of Agriculture Innovation, in the case of Corpoica, in the case of Colombia, and then INIAP in the case of Bolivia. So this is a regional team with the main objectives, as I was telling you, to learn how to measure emissions and also to learn to identify and value strategies of mitigation. The components of the projects are 4. First is to identify with what systems we will work within the project. Maybe some of you already mentioned livestock in the world. Livestock can vary a lot. I had the pleasure to be in New Zealand a couple of times, and definitely it's a type of livestock that our colleague presented this morning. The same in the Andean region. Our pastures, for example, around the Bogota, then we have also in Bolivia, they are very different systems. So first we said what system we will work on. Then it says here to determine the emissions. I want to point out that in the region, there was no capability to measure the emissions of methane or nitrous oxide. So we were doing it in an introductory way. They didn't have the capability to finish the initial part of the training. They started it, but they didn't finish. So this is innovation for the region, to have the capability to measure methane and nitrous oxide in livestock systems. So this is one component of the project. And also this complements with the strengthening of the capacity of research in that topic. I can research if I can measure it. So I'm learning, I train about the methodology, and after that I use it in order to do more research. And the project has done this third part. And they have strengthened the research. And also there was a second main objective, which was to evaluate and develop different scenarios of mitigation of enteric methane. The first component, we decide on which is the productive system that we were going to face in the execution of the project. And no surprises is the Andean area because of the different characteristics, because of the participation of milk production in each country. There is a description of the different systems that we're trying to learn more. And the second topic was to learn to quantify emissions. And here we have done the work in 2 countries. In Peru, we have developed a capability to quantify enteric methane, and this capability we have applied it to obtain information from the system. We have used the methodology of the SF6. We have also worked with 2 contrasting systems. The traditional system in a pasture with mixed livestock at 4,000 meters above sea level, and compared to a system that we called a different one, with pastures with alfalfa and oats at a lower altitude. And this we have measured at the rainy season and also the dry season, seeing the differences that are in the weather and how they impact the productive system. These are the results that we can share, that we have with you. It's in regard about the pasture systems. From the emissions here per day, the emissions per kilo that was consumed, and the emission per liter of milk that was corrected by energy. These are the results that didn't exist in the Andes area. These are the first results that are presented here and also in international literature. So, for example, these 2 liters day in the pasture system. So here you can see the trend, the international trend. You can see that according to the intensity of when the production intensity increases, the emissions decrease. So this is something that we need to promote in regards to the innovation in livestock systems. While I innovate more, I have environmental gain, and that's the emission intensity. Hugo has already presented information more integral, which is the emission factor. So when we do more measures about this, we will be able to obtain more strength to have an emission factor, which is what percentage of the energy converts into methane. And because now we have the capability to do it, we have done measures in contrasting systems. So right now we have the capacity to propose, at least with our limited data, some emission data. I am member right now of the IPCC, and we're doing as a team the update of methodological guides in order to measure emissions in livestock. And because in the team that we've been working for 3 years in order to update these guides, we have knowledge that we need to know get more information in the south, but also in Africa and India, because most of this research has been done in the north. So these emission factors will be later. I've also pointed out that we also have worked. I also want to thank Hugo. The project is gonna leave, well, the project had some difficulties, and Colombia needed to participate actively. For example, in Fontagro, they put a lot of their emphasis to try to Colombia to stay actively in the project. Actively means that they have done some quantifications. They finished the educational process to measure methane, and this has a results measurements in some traditional areas from Bogota, Chicuyo, for example, and they have And they have compared, like 2 systems with lower cost. So the team, they decided that this was going to be the alternative to be evaluated. And because they started a little bit later than us, I cannot share some of the data of the methane emissions with them. But the work has already finished. This is the profile of the production and also the milk composition, that maybe 2 or 3 months it will be complemented with also methane emission per animal, per kilo of food, ingested food, and also per liter of milk. I have pointed out then another component in the emission is the nitrous oxides. So, and if you go to New Zealand, probably they've invested like $100 in mitigation. 70 maybe went to livestock and 30 in nitrous oxide, but they have exits because it's in the market. And that livestock, it's more complicated to put more options to mitigate emissions in the market. So Cesar maybe Cesar Pineros maybe doesn't agree with me, but also we have introduced the capability to measure nitrous oxide produced by the livestock, and we have learned that, and also we have used that learned for the pasture system. My area is methane. Dr. Jaupari has done that, who is part of the staff that is contributing to the organization of this event today. And also we have only worked on this during the dry season. Also we have the addition of urine, and that we also understand it covers many of the differences that we have in all the differences in regards to nitrous oxide. This is the type of experiment that we have learned how to use and that we are using to measure the nitrous oxide. These are the static cameras that are installed in these pastures. The same as in the last case for the analytical stage. We're right now on the final stage, and right now we are doing the laboratory stage to quantify the nitrous oxides in the system. What is the impact of this? The contribution to the elaboration of information. So this information is the basic to define the environmental health of a country in regards of livestock. These systems, they have different levels of precision. Well, I have more level to... So our contribution here is basically in this area to provide... We want to improve this system of the national systems of formation of gases. And also we need to then establish what is the carbon footprint and in the different dairy productive systems in the Andean region. Brazil has invested millions of dollars to do these 2 things, and they have done it for 2 reasons. They are first exporters of meat in the world, and they wanted to show the international trade that their livestock didn't have a really bad carbon footprint. So, and that meant that they could increase their share of the market. That is true. In Chile, for example, Dr. Puno already explained, it's a country that exports meat as well. In 20 years, they didn't export, and now they are very good, important exporters of meat in the region. So they have to do this as well, because this could be a barrier of trade in the world. When we were talking with colleagues from ICA, and that is a good way of working with other people, and we've been told about like some new works in Uruguay, and they were telling us, you with Senasa, you should also do something similar. So maybe these could be the elements that can contribute to improve the dynamics here in Peru. And the component 3 is to evaluate and develop scenarios of mitigation. Mitigation means how can I reduce the emission. So for that, for example, if I propose an option to mitigate, it needs to have a cost and benefit. What is the cost of this and what is the benefit? So what we have been doing in every country member of this project, we have identified the livestock systems, and we have them identify them options of food with options to mitigate the emissions. For that, we have used an existing model which we have adjusted a little bit from the emissions part to analyze the results, the economic, environmental, and productive results from these possible mitigation strategies. And this is the second time in the Andean region that will be documented in an ordered way the identification of the strategies of mitigation. The first one was Plan CC in Peru with funding from South Africa and other countries. The second is this one specifically for livestock. The first one was for different sectors in Peru, like for energy, the industry, forestry. It was a bigger area, but this one is quite specific, just on livestock system. This is an example of one of the results from using the tool. Bolivia, our colleagues from Bolivia, they work with the team, identify the different food options that could mitigate, and they learned a little bit more about the simulation, and then in person they complemented that training, and they had results. These are the examples of results. There are two systems. There's the milk production based on the information that was provided by each team. For example, the yearly emission, and then you have the intensity of them. So basically, in the economical aspect, you can see it. So this is so here you can see economical benefit and environmental benefit. Definitely, this is one of the many scenarios that Bolivia brought to evaluate within the activities of the project. Also, we have worked for all the 4 countries. What is the impact? All the region has signed in Paris the contributions. So they have signed how many emissions they're going to reduce by 2030. And the 4 countries, they have put as their ambition that their livestock will be part of that emission reduction. And what part of livestock, what is the intervention that we will do to achieve that 20 or 30% of reduction? So this type of analysis will allow us to identify those strategies that will contribute to this final impact. The 4th component is the strengthening of capabilities of research. And for this, we have visited laboratories in the region that were more advanced than us in certain aspects that we wanted to learn. And here, for example, we have here the UNSAG, the University from Cusco. I think they had 2 years of staff, full-time staff from New Zealand. They were trained in techniques to measure methane and nitrous oxide, and fortunately we were able to visit them, and they've shared part of that knowledge. And also INEA, ICATIE, they also allowed us to visit them so we could learn a little bit more about of the things that we needed to learn a little bit more of. And then So then we thought that we knew enough, so it was our turn to train people. So we offered 2 training courses to the different professionals of the entities that are involved in the project. One specifically about the measure of etheric methane and nitrous oxide, and the second about the identification and evaluation of mitigation strategies using this simulation software. So this is being translated, or maybe we are putting it in technical bulletins. The first one about the methodological application to measure, and the second about the identification and mitigation strategies. So I think this will be the contribution of the project for the dissemination of topics regarding climate change and livestock. Something very important Hugo already mentioned is that we've incorporated in all these works postgraduate students, 5 from masters and 1 from doing a PhD, and also we have done some exchanges. Corpoica was already doing that, so we said, like, let's learn from Corpoica. So people from Corpoica came here so they could exchange some of the knowledge and also this is very important. We're going to, in May, we will go to each country and we will do an institutional presentation. That means in institutions and professionals who are interested in these topics about the results of this project, with emphasis on mitigation policies. So we've worked, we have quantified, we have results. So how can we do some public policies in regards of mitigation? Hugo already mentioned that the projects should not, well, the projects will finish, but we want them to continue in regards of what they've been working on. We had some success in getting also resources to move forward in regards to climate change in livestock, and because of the training that we have received, and also because of the partial funding that we have received. And to sum up, this project has promoted the joint work between the different countries, and definitely we have reduced the gap between some countries in regards to quantification and mitigation of greenhouse gases emissions by livestock. We also have moved forward in regards to public policies, and also we have acknowledged the good parts of the livestock, that for us it's very important for food safety and also to reduce poverty. When we have done Corpoinca told us that we needed to create projects according to our markets. So what I was thinking is we need to look for the people who really need us the most. So in the case of the livestock, it's the livestock in the region of the Andes. So the project has also provided different capabilities, and these capabilities are the base for everything that I've told you about. And as the last part is that maybe we haven't interacted much with New Zealand, maybe zero, and I think that's quite a pity, and maybe this is a problem because of the design. It is not because that we don't want to work with New Zealand. I think that maybe the design of the project, I was not part of the design of the project, the design didn't allow it. I think it's very stupid. We have a country which is a leader. We have visited the laboratory in Massey. They have a leader country, and we couldn't get together. Indirectly, yes, because our partners, they have been trained by people from New Zealand, mainly, but I think we have reached that level on a project too, so we can have a direct relation with New Zealand. I understand that there are some scholarships. There's like scholarships like the Graduate Research Alliance, but with this we have the capabilities to do it. But I wish we could have more interaction with New Zealand, and I think the regional impact is important. So that's everything that I wanted to present. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos al doctor.
We thank Dr. Gomez for his exposition. Now, this part of the morning session has finished. We wait for the afternoon session that will start at 2 p.m. Thank you.